This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag.
After the Great Revival at Cane Ridge in Kentucky in 1801, it was reported, quote, Becca Bell is with child to one Brown. Kate Cummins also got careless and had a bastard. Patty McGuire has been whoring.
Patty straight up. Okay. Patty got thrown to the bus hard. The other ones, they slipped up. Patty whore.
Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
All right. We're getting right back into the story where we left off. We're deep in the book Boone, a biography written by Robert Morgan. We're deep into Boone's life. Last episode, he rescued his daughter Jemima and the two Holloway girls from a band of young Indian braves, youngish, 20s maybe, something like that, who kidnapped the girls as they were floating down the river. Drug them through the woods for 3 days or so, and the dads and the boys, Boone, chief among them, tracked them down, saved them, rescued them. And
as a father does.
Yes, and we talked about that on the last episode. If you missed that episode, you need to go back. It's just one of the best.
What's crazy to me is that they didn't like kill everybody. Like,
no, I mean,
as
well, they
far
ran
as
away.
like kidnappings go, yeah, but still, like as far as kidnapping goes, this is a fairly peaceable kidnapping.
Yeah,
both on the kidnapper's part and the retrieval. I mean, someone does die, but ultimately, that's
two Indians die.
Two Indians die
out of the 5. Yeah. So we're gonna get right into this. Now, this is 1776, roughly 1775, 76. Remember, America, we declared our independence in 1776. The Revolutionary War started about a year earlier, and here we are. This is the beginning of the Revolutionary War, but we're out here on the frontier with Boone. We're not like in the state of Virginia. Back to the book. The girls told Boone and the others what they had heard about the Cherokee attacks on Watauga and the war party on its way to Kentucky. Also, the girls knew that a party of Indians were camped only 3 miles away at the lower Blue Licks. Dragging Canoe and his warriors did indeed attack the Watauga settlement and were defeated on July 21 of 1776. The Cherokee invasion of Kentucky proved a failure also, and after that, the more peaceable chiefs started to take control, like Atakulakula. Taking as much meat from the buffalo as they could carry, the group started back towards Boonesborough. The girls had not had any sleep for 2 nights and were worn out from the walking and worry. But the exhilaration of being rescued enabled them to make the return journey. You get like all this energy because, you want to get home. Like everything you thought was going to be your future life has now, it's just like this huge relief, right? Samuel Henderson, with his half-shaved face, took a lot of teasing, but he was so pleased that Betsy, his fiancée, was safe that he probably didn't mind the rough humor. Flanders Calloway, who would later marry Jemima, was with the group of riders, and romance added to the cheer and joy of the return.
Calloway.
Mm-hmm. Remember.
Not the Calloway.
Is
that his son?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in-laws. They're in-laws.
That's right.
Oh, that's rough, Boone.
Yep.
I feel for you, buddy.
Yep. Yeah.
No wonder. It's one thing to have like a guy in your community that you just can't stand because he's obnoxious or whatever the case might be. But there's just like a multiplying factor of at least 10.
Yeah, I've said for those that are kind of lost or confused, I can't stand Holloway. Was it Richard? It's the father of Flanders Calloway. Yeah, Calloway turns out to be. I said Holloway, but it's Calloway. Turns out to be a wanker. So anyway, back to the book. It says by the time they got back to Boonesborough on Wednesday for a welcome and celebration, this is July 17th, Jemima's foot was healed. Jemima later recalled that when they reached Boonesborough and were ferried across the river, her mother's joy was intense beyond description. She laughed and cried for joy as she always did when she was overjoyed, said Jemima. The story of the kidnapping of Jemima, Boone, and Calloway girls had already spread among the settlements of Kentucky and would soon reach across the mountains to the eastern cities and the world beyond. It became part of the legend of the frontier. Its popularity was spurred in part because Jemima was the daughter of Daniel Boone. But it was also a story that anyone could interpret in whatever way they chose. To Indian haters, it was an example of the perfidy and unpredictability of the Indians. After all, Hanging Ma had pretended to be Boone's friend. To many, the moral of the story was that Indians were never to be trusted, and the sexual overtones of the 5 braves grabbing the 3 girls from the canoe and forcing them to march in bonds added an edge of horror to the story that did not have to be explained or even commented on. To those with more liberal views of Indians, the story illustrated the code of the warriors. Though they were taking the girls into captivity, they never beat them or molested them sexually. Even though the girls impeded their progress, dropped clues for their pursuers, and made fools of the Indians with the pony, the braves showed extraordinary patience and tolerance. Hanging Ma seemed particularly gentle, even affectionate with Jemima. The kidnapping of Jemima and the Callaway girls also signaled the beginning of another cycle of guerrilla war on the part of the Shawnees and other Ohio tribes. There would be further attacks. This was just a warning of what was to come, and those predictions seemed to be borne out in raids from the north over the next 2 years. To an objective observer, with the advantage of hindsight, the kidnapping shows the kind of inflammatory act a few roving Indians could commit for which the whole nation of the Cherokees or Shawnees would be blamed. Such an act could be committed without the knowledge of the chief or the tribe in general. But as far as the settlers were concerned, it was an attack by the Indian nation itself. Chief Cornstalk of the Shawnees blamed such acts by a few young braves for triggering and escalating the deadly troubles of 1777 to 1778. Retaliation for an atrocity on either side might be made against Indians or whites unconnected with the original attack. The logic of blood and passion ruled, and the result was often tragic. It's group identity. You know, all Indians are XYZ, all white men are XYZ. And
Brian,
so
if I can't broadly put people into a bucket, how am I supposed to go through life? Spending the time to individually learn all these people?
Yeah, I mean, it does become a problem because, you know, like they said, if a couple of Indian boys did this thing, that gave license to other people to then just attack any Indian. And then the Indians felt like they should offer retribution to the white people for attacking them. And it just became a pretense for them to, just a justification to attack one another.
When they killed Boone's oldest son, was it John? I can't remember his name. James. They went to the Indian Nation at the time, and they kind of got some of the guys, they did bring to justice, but not all.
Yep, they round up a few of the Indians who were responsible and turned them over to
the authorities.
So it says, Hanging Ma's involvement in the kidnapping of the 3 girls has remained a mystery, Brent. He was older than his 4 companions, and he was not known for being warlike. He returned to the Cherokee towns in the southern mountains and was considered a friend of the Americans. Hanging Ma rose to be an important chief, urging peace with Americans. He helped negotiate the Tellico Treaty of November 7th, 1794. When he died in 1796, he was described by New York Magazine on May 1st, 1796 as a man distinguished for his love of peace. It is possible that Hanging Ma's traveling companions rushed to take the girls on the spur of the moment, inflamed by the angry rhetoric at the conference in Chota, and he felt he had no choice but to go along with it. After all, they were in a territory claimed by some Shawnees, not the Cherokees, and Hanging Ma was outnumbered. Indian custom taught bowing to consensus. The kidnapping may have been so spontaneous an act, it was almost an accident. But it has resonated down the halls of American history and fiction and folklore to the present day. While Boone and his men were rescuing girls, there had been an attack on Nathaniel Hart's homestead. His livestock and crops were destroyed, as was the orchard of 500 apple trees.
Dang.
Outlying settlers gathered at Boonesborough, Harrodsburg, and Logan Station again, and for the first time in a year, work resumed on the fortification of Boonesborough. Picket walls were added between the cabins, so there was a stockade, But the blockhouses at the corners were unfinished. George Morgan Chin tells us Boonesborough had no water supply within the walls of the fort. When completed, 26 log cabins crowded the small enclosure, which measured approximately 260 by 180 feet. 26 cabins were inside the fort. In his capacity as magistrate of Transylvania, Boone officiated at the wedding of Samuel Henderson and Elizabeth Calloway. On August 7th, 1776, Richard Calloway, who passed up few opportunities to show his resentment of Boone, made Henderson sign a bond stating that he would later have the ceremony repeated by a higher authority when one was available.
This one doesn't count, but as soon as I can, guys, I'm on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just what a pecker. Like,
so I looked it up. 400 apple trees will cover about 14 acres.
Wow. It says Elizabeth Calloway marries Samuel Henderson, and her dad, Richard, how fitting. Her dad, Dick Calloway, says, passed up few opportunities to show his resentment of Boone because Boone was the officiator. He's like, he had his son-in-law sign a piece of paper that said he'd later have the ceremony done again by someone else other than Boone. What a petty, childish, whiny, pathetic person. He either had the authority or he didn't. You know what I mean?
Either your kid's getting frisky, unmarried, or she is, like, or not. Like, come on, bro.
Even so, it was an occasion of celebration, merriment, and relief. According to George W. Rank, the guests were treated to homegrown watermelons, of which the whole station was proud.
Watermelons are hard to grow, bro. They should be. I've had crap luck my whole life with watermelons.
Whatever the rumors about her begetting, Jemima was the child closest to Boone of any of his children. She later told her niece that while she was with the Indians, she vowed that if she was ever rescued, she would never disobey her father again, and she would stay by him. She never forgot looking into the woods and seeing Boone crawling through the brush to her rescue. That's a powerful thing for a daughter, I think. When Boone was captured by the Shawnees in 1778 and taken to Chillicothe, and the rest of the family assumed he was dead and returned to the Yadkin, it was Jemima who stayed at Boonesborough waiting for his return.
That is insane, bro. How long was he gone? He was kidnapped and then raised by Indians for 2 years? 3 years?
We're not there yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but I'm the whole.
So it says Freemasonry and the American Revolution in Kentucky from 1775 to 1777. Okay. Little history. We're going to dive into a little history section in the book. Set some more context so we can fully understand this story we're in. It says, the people of Kentucky were from the first truly patriotic, Lyman Draper wrote in his unfinished The Life of Daniel Boone. He credited the independent spirit of the largely Scotch-Irish settlers for the support of the American cause. But Draper's claim is a gross simplification. While there was a dislike of authority and the spirit of independence among many of those who had gone to Kentucky, it was a spirit more personal than political. Many had come to Kentucky hoping to leave such issues as loyalty behind. It wasn't clear whether Kentucky was a new colony, a county, or a county in one of the older colonies or what. While Daniel Boone was mostly concerned with events in the wilderness far over the mountains, the war that broke out between the British government and the colonies in the East in 1775 affected much of what eventually took place in the settlement of the Middle Ground. It is well known that many of the leaders of the American Revolution were Freemasons. Because their meetings were secret, it was easy for Freemasons to covertly organize as patriots. Franklin's high degree membership gave him a special advantage in his negotiations for the American cause in Paris, as many of the political and intellectual leaders whose support he needed, including Voltaire and Helvetius, were Masons.
So that's Benjamin Franklin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just double checking.
So many people, they're all about Benjamin Franklin and electricity and the key on the kite and all that. What they don't realize is He was a revolutionary. He was key to America gaining independence from England. He ends up being the ambassador of America in France. France. And without the courtship and the support of the French, we couldn't have probably beat the English.
And the French,
the British Empire.
Him. Loved him. They just like he should have been born French.
I know.
Like it's the most bizarre thing. Like
he's a little horn dogger, and those French ladies. The whole French culture, dude. Just like
they get down.
Yeah, it's just hilarious. Anyway, he liked it there. Freemasonry's ideals of fraternity, equality, freedom, reason, and high moral purpose inspired many to think about society and politics in a new way. The international nature of Freemasonry affected the American cause directly, as military leaders such as Lafayette from France and Baron von Steuben from Germany offered their services to American Brothers of the Apron. So you have this Freemason fraternity, and it spreads overseas. It's in France as well. And remember the theology, the sort of, I guess the underlying progressive idea among Freemasons is that all men are brothers and all men are created equal. All men we should transcend color, race. There were even blacks who were Freemasons. So the whole fraternity was more like, in a sense, we're all brothers. We're all class and race and all of that is irrelevant. So the poorest could be a Freemason. The richest could be a Freemason. It's a very Christian sort of approach, more along the lines of what Christ taught, that all men are children of God and we all should help one another and look past any immutable characteristics that we have. And it's interesting because there were Freemasons in France, but there were Freemasons in England and there were Freemasons in the Americas. So it says there were also Freemasons in the British Army. And it is thought that redcoat Masons were sometimes reluctant to kill their brother Masons on the rebelling side. The first lodge in Kentucky was not established until 1788, but many Masons, including Boone, were there in 1775.
Really? So the first lodge in Kentucky or in America? Okay, in Kentucky. Okay.
Yeah. Though not a Freemason, no one was more influential in stirring America toward rebellion than Patrick Henry of Hanover County, Virginia. Born in 1736, 2 years after Boone, Henry tried a number of occupations before training himself for the law. He was a spellbinding public speaker, known as a radical. He vigorously attacked the Stamp Act as a delegate to the House of Burgesses between 1765 and 1774, span of about 10 years, and to the Continental Congress between 74 and 76. He made fiery speeches that were printed and quoted everywhere. Quote, "If this be treason, make the most of it." And, quote, "Give me liberty or give me death," are, of course, his best-known phrases.
That first one's pretty dope.
Yeah, if this be treason, make the most of it.
I can get behind that, dude. If we're going down, I'm going down swinging, bro.
And "give me liberty or give me death" are, of course, his best-known phrases. Elected governor of the new state of Virginia in 1776, he secretly appointed George Rogers Clark to attack British forts in the Illinois country. For the future republic, this may have been his most significant act. What's wild about that is, if you're going to go up against the British Empire, well, by golly, you better be able to win.
You don't want to be a loser in a war, ever.
I mean, this is treason. This isn't a war like you against the French. This is betrayal of your own country. This is a rebellion. This is treason against the king. So this is, draw and quarter and torture kind of stuff. People want to act like, it's no big deal that America won its independence. Like it was just, like they just gloss over it. Not realizing what the founding fathers did, how remarkable the whole idea was, the whole experiment was, how courageous it was, how much they put on the line, all of that. It's crazy. And so the book says George Washington, who kept the Continental Army from disintegrating in the darkest days of the Revolution, was an active Mason. Boone had met Washington in 1755 when he served with the militia, and again in 1760 in Culpeper, Virginia. And it is likely that Washington inspired Boone to become a Freemason. But the spirit of rebellion was demonstrated more explicitly in Harrodsburg than in Boonesborough. In June of 1776, the Harrodsburg community elected the Committee of Safety, whose members wrote to the new Virginia government that they were willing to aid in any way they could the present laudable cause of American freedom. The authors of the letter hoped that Virginia's new government would recognize their claims in Kentucky and validate their deeds. George Rogers Clark and John Gabriel Jones were elected to represent the settlers. So, these frontier colonies, they're saying, hey, we're ready to go up against the government. What do they call it? The present laudable cause of American freedom. It was in the fall of 1777 that the British decided to expand the role of their Indian allies in the West to attack the American settlements. With the Indians doing most of the fighting and dying, it would cost the British relatively little to enlarge the Western Front in the assault on the rebelling colonies. So the British are like, why would we send our own soldiers? Let's just pay all the Indians to kill the settlers.
To be fair, that is the best move.
That's savage.
It is savage, but also genius.
Is it? Because it says here, Lieutenant Governor Henry Hamilton at Detroit, who belonged to a family that included many prominent Freemasons, was directed to use Native Americans, quote, in making a diversion and exciting an alarm upon the frontiers of Virginia and Pennsylvania. Hamilton offered generous bounties for scalps of settlers in the Ohio Valley. Because this policy increased the ferocity and frequency of Indian raids into Kentucky and outraged the settlers, Hamilton may have done the British more harm than good. As a result, Hamilton's offers of pardon and free land to any who crossed to the British side were later largely ignored. Yeah. Why choose your side wisely? But yeah, they basically said, we're with the British Empire. You're going to have your political factions, your people who believe in one cause over another. But that sets sort of the context for what's going on here, and how America is starting to become a unified, rebellion. And it's interesting how the Freemason fraternity is linking all of these connections together. And you can't deny the ideals that are head by the foundation of the Freemason movement in terms of the idea that all men are basically equal, that's antithetical to the monarchy in England and what that means, right? There are the elites and there are the gentlemen and there are the betters and other people are below them. And you have a very different you do have English common law, which is closer to what we have today. But you're talking about a whole nother level of freedom for the people and equal rights that weren't quite fully established at this time in England. And so, anyway, there's a little backstory there. So in 1777 to 1778, describing Kentucky at this time, the historian Reuben Goldthwait wrote, hill and valley, timberland and thicket, meadow, prairie, grasslands, and canebrake, these abounded on every hand in happy distribution of light and shadow. They were wordy, weren't they? It says that the beauty was matched by the extreme danger. A party of Cherokees was defeated at Island Flats on July 20, 1776, and later the settlers in Kentucky heard that the Cherokees, encouraged by the British, had attacked Watauga on the next day. As the Indian raids continued in Kentucky, more settlers returned to the east. John Floyd remarked that he had only 30 men left to defend Boonesborough.
Dang.
With supplies running low and the threat of Indian attacks increasing, more and more unmarried men returned east. Floyd wrote to Preston, I want as much to return as any person can do, but if I leave this country now, there is scarcely one single man hereabouts but what will follow the example. When I think of the deplorable condition a few helpless families are likely to be in, I conclude to sell my life as dear as I can in their defense rather than make an ignominious escape. So there's like 35 or less people there. Or was it men or just people in general?
I think it said men.
And so here they are, and he's writing to Preston saying, this is Floyd, who's stud. We talked about before, the young man that Boone went into the wilderness and to the surveyor groups that split up into 3, and he kind of helped them all get out. Floyd is there, and he's basically writing to say, yeah, I'd love to ditch. I'd love to get the hell out of here, but if I do, I can think of the few helpless families that will be left here to defend this by themselves, and I conclude to sell my life as dear as I can in their defense rather than make an ignominious escape. So it's very, low, I would say, principles driven here. Mm-hmm. He's like, I couldn't live with myself if I were to ditch right now, like a coward. So
and the fort's still not done yet, right? Like it's kind of, but not like the.
I think it's close, but not yet. I don't believe. The fort was low on ammunition again, and in September, Colonel Arthur Campbell of the Holston Valley sent a small shipment of powder and lead, which was divided among the men of the community. The supply Boone had brought from Williamsburg in June was long gone. Lead was so scarce that John Harrod and Benjamin Logan took pack horses to Long Island of the Holston to secure a supply, which they distributed among the Kentucky settlements when they returned in October.
I would be so mad watching Henderson unpack all of those books that he brought with him initially and be like...
This is years later, though.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I was going to say, what are they going to do, throw books at people?
I mean, this is like... this is what, a year and a half later, 2 years later?
Okay.
So they've been there a little bit.
Okay.
Enough for kids to get kidnapped and a second winter to take place, and now things are heating up.
Low on food, not great, not a best fortress, I would call it.
Yeah. It says the Kentucky communities were vulnerable at this time because only Harrodsburg had a stockade completed or nearly completed, and none had found a supply of lead in the region or had the means of making gunpowder. And they were more than 200 miles from the protection of the Virginia militia. In the event of a British instigated attack by Indians, they were on their own, too busy clearing land, raising corn, building cabins, and hunting for meat to prepare for war. Most of the settlers felt helpless as the revolutionary conflict spread over the mountains and down the Ohio Valley. It was like a continuation of Lord Dunmore's war, except now the Crown was urging the Indians to attack rather than opposing them. Their attempts to defend themselves constituted, in their eyes, an important military service to Virginia, and as much the settlers felt entitled to succor and supplies. On December 1776, a Mingo chief named Captain Pluggy.
Shut up. Rabbit hole, here we come. Oh my gosh.
December 29, 1776, a Mingo chief named Captain Pluggy and his war party attacked McClellan's station. George Rogers Clark had just arrived at McClellan's, and on his way to retrieve the hidden powder the state of Virginia had given him. And he was on his way. Captain Pluggy was killed and the Indians beaten back. 2 whites, including McClellan himself, were killed. The fight with Captain Pluggy and the Mingos was the beginning of what became known as the terrible year of the 3 Sevens, 1777.
Dun, dun,
777.
dun.
Sometimes called the Terrible Sevens, it began with the death of Captain Pluggy and the esteemed McClellan, and it would not end until many more lives were lost and much blood spilled on the dark and bloody ground. So many settlers would leave Kentucky that only Harrodsburg and Boonesborough remained occupied.
Oh, dang.
Hugh McGarry, who had been elected chairman of the Kentucky Committee of Safety, sent a letter to the governor of Virginia dated February of 1777. We are surrounded with enemies on every side. Every day increases their numbers, the emotional McGarry wrote. Our fort is already filled with widows and orphans. Their necessities call upon us daily for supplies. Luckily, there was a lull in the attacks, and Benjamin Logan and his family left Harrodsburg to reoccupy Logan Station. A message arrived from Virginia confirming Clark's commission as a major in the new state militia. Daniel Boone, James Harrod, John Todd, and Benjamin Logan were commissioned as captains. Whatever the status of the Transylvania Company, Virginia intended to recognize the Transylvania settlers as citizens of the new country and make use of their services. The militia assembled expecting an attack.
So can you read the reason they call him Pluggy is because the white people couldn't say his full name. It's like 60 characters right there for that name. But if you look at the second one, it's Plukk.
So he's a Mohawk.
Mm-hmm.
Tekaniyatarito Plukaminoti.
Pluggy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But, yeah. So what he was really active during that time. He's one of the most active war chiefs. But one of the things that he did is he established, a place that they referred to as Pluggy's Town. And it was just kind of like a Native American settlement that Native Americans would, not necessarily camp at, but stage raids.
Well, he's dead now.
Yeah, that's he was really active, but I was like, he died kind of early on, it seems like.
It says that there was an attack that came on March 5 when Catawamago, or Chief Blackfish, I like that better, and about 70 Shawnees attacked a party of maple syrup boilers near Harrodsburg. Shawnees attacked a party of maple syrup boilers near Harrodsburg. They killed William Ray and took as prisoner Thomas Shores. James Ray, hardly more than a boy, outran the Indians, a feat Blackfish never forgot. William Combs hid in a tree that had fallen into a sinkhole and watched the Shawnees celebrate their victory by mutilating William Ray's body, dancing and drinking maple syrup. Later that day, James Harrod and Hugh McGarry organized a party of 30 men and rode out in search of the syrup makers. When they found Ray's mangled body, they thought it was the older William Coombs, but Coombs came out of hiding and they buried Ray's body.
Dang.
The attack on Harrodsburg inspired the men to continue work on the fortifications at Boonesborough. Boone was able to get enough cooperation to complete most of the palisade. The blockhouses at the corners were not finished, but at least there was an enclosure with pickets between cabins, gates that could be shut in case of attack.
This just illustrates the human condition to me so well. They literally have an axe hanging over their head, and they're dragging their feet on finishing that fort. I'm having anxiety reading this story because they won't finish the fort.
Blackfish's Shawnees were still roving about. The Shawnees had every reason to attack the Kentucky settlers, who were claiming and destroying their buffalo hunting grounds. But many Shawnees were now also loyal to the British, who had once saved them from the anger of the Six Nations, the Iroquois. Making war on the forts was a way of showing their enduring gratitude. A party appeared at Boonesborough on March 7, killed a black man working in the fields, and wounded another man. There were more attacks on Harrodsburg and scattered settlements later in March. On the morning of April 24, 1777, Daniel Goodman and another man left the stockade at Boonesborough to drive in some horses gathered a quarter of a mile away. They were fired on by a small party of Indians and tried to run back to the fort, but Goodman was overtaken and tomahawked and scalped.
Dang.
Young Simon Kenton, about to start out on a hunt, saw what was happening and shot the Indian who had taken Goodman's scalp. Then Kenton and the others chased the rest of the Indians away. Boone and about a dozen men, hearing the shots, rushed out of the stockade with their rifles. They followed Kenton out into the fields, not realizing that the small party of Indians was a decoy.
Oh, dang.
More than 100 Indians were hiding behind stumps and brush. While Boone and his men were advancing, Kenton saw an Indian about to fire on them. Kenton shot the ambusher, and while he was reloading and Boone and the others scanned the thickets, a large number of Indians rushed out to cut off their retreat to the fort. Quote, "Boys, we are gone. Let us sell our lives as dearly as we can," Boone shouted, and gave orders to charge right through the Indians.
Hell yeah. You know I would be, dude. You hear that guy say, "We're doubling down. It's now or not." Go.
"Boys, we are gone. Let us sell our lives as dearly as we can," Boone shouted, and gave orders to charge right through the Indians. The men fired into the Shawnees and then swung their rifles as clubs. The Boonesborough men fought with fury, but Boone himself was shot in the ankle and the bone was broken. As Boone fell, an Indian rushed to tomahawk him, but was shot by Kenton, who then used his rifle to club another warrior attempting to scalp Boone. The powerful Kenton picked up Boone and carried him to the fort where Rebecca and her daughters were watching. Jemima rushed out to help carry her father inside. 3 other men, John Todd, Isaac Height, and Michael Stoner, were wounded in the melee, but were helped by William Bush back to the fort. The Shawnees later admitted they lost 22 braves in this battle.
Dang. You want some nightmare fuel?
Wow.
That guy got scalped as a child.
That's nice.
And survived.
That doesn't even look, I mean, that's an ugly photo, man.
Well, first of all, they colorized it, and I don't feel like the colorization definitely brings something to it, you know?
It says, back in the fort as the wounded were being nursed, Boone said to Kenton, "Well, Simon, you have behaved like a man today. Indeed, you are a fine fellow." There's no better example of frontier understatement. Boone and Kenton had immense respect for each other and knew they had to depend on each other, but when they spoke from the heart, they used few words. 5 days later at Harrisburg, Francis McConnell and James Ray were practicing their marksmanship outside the fort when an Indian appeared and shot McConnell. You know, you got to wonder.
They're living in war,
and
but
they're
not acting like war.
Outside the gate practicing, and they got shot by an Indian. Anyway, thinking the Indian was alone, Ray rushed. Come on, dude.
Brian, this is that gene pool just weeding itself out right now.
Okay, back to thinking the Indian was alone. Ray rushed at him, but
what Indian is ever alone?
They
literally travel in packs.
But just then, a large number of Indians appeared and shot at Ray. Luckily, he was not hit and ran the 150 yards to the fort, but found the gate closed. He dropped behind a stump a few feet from the stockade wall and was pinned down there for hours while bullets kicked up dirt around him. His mother watched through a loophole in the fort. Finally, Ray shouted, "For God's sake, dig a hole under the cabin wall and take me in." The hole was made and Ray escaped through the opening. Ray would live to become a general in the War of 1812 and die on his farm in Mercer County, Kentucky. Looks like 15 years after Boone in 1835 at the age of 75.
Dang.
But he had to run 150 yards from the Indians first and climb under a hole under the wall.
Good Lord. Granted, these guys it's muskets, but still, dude. Have you seen
a musket?
They're
rifles.
They got both. Have you seen those bullets?
Yeah.
They're not little bullets that they're talking about. You're talking about a 50 caliber.
They're mini cannons.
Yeah.
About as accurate, too. During this period of attacks, each fort sent out spies to range over the country to spot Indian movements. Simon Kenton and Thomas Brooks were chosen by Boone to act as spies for Boonesborough. How would you like to be a spy, Brett?
I'm a really good liar. But other than that, I think I would suck.
I don't think the Indians are going to fall for lies at this point. You're spying on Indians.
Okay.
It's like you spying on the Chinese and trying to pretend like you're Chinese. I don't think you're going to pass.
No.
This isn't that kind of spying. You're not an undercover cop.
Well, when you say spy, I go, dun, 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 like immediately.
Yeah, it says, Kenton could glide through the woods almost into the Indian camps unseen.
But can he make a martini? Not a very good spy then.
Kenton, it sounds like a freaking badass. First of all, he saved Boone after he got shot in the leg. He shot the other guy. He shot the Indian when it was about to shoot him. They run all the way back. He carries Boone wounded back into the fort, and Kenton can now sneak through the woods, almost in and glide through the woods and almost into Indian camps unseen. So, dude, is as formidable as Boone. It sounds like
it is, and it's so interesting to me that these guys are able to sneak up on these Native Americans at all,
and yet a lot of other men seem completely incapable of being sneaky. Like,
it is something I feel, Brian, that is innate. I don't know if you can teach sneaky to somebody.
You have to wonder, there is abilities. People who live, you could say, oh, they just got lucky. We talk about becoming an old buck, right? Mm-hmm. There's got to be a combination of luck for sure when in those younger years when you haven't quite learned it all. But there's got to be an innate also an innate skill in being wary, alert, secretive, sneaky. Like patience is part of that. Constant vigilance. Like it has to be somewhat, I think, innate, natural. You know, you can learn so much of it, but, and then you could say, well, they just got lucky, but you just don't live in this period and get lucky 75 times. You know what I mean? Like you can say, yes, I got lucky a few times, but it's like when I know a man who is really good at, who's killed a lot of big bull elk, and people want to say he just gets lucky. He just gets lucky
once,
and you're like
twice, sure.
Yeah,
I know people got struck by lightning twice.
He just keeps doing it.
Yeah.
Like, and so after a while you have to say, no, there's something, he might be humble and unassuming and so on. You might look at him and go, I don't know how he does it. But the end results, the statistics speak for themselves. That's why I say anybody who lived as long as Boone, you can't, at some point it becomes just a prowess that he has that others lack. It says, so back to the book, it says, like George Washington, another giant of a man, never wounded in battle, Kenton seemed to have a charmed life. Did you know that?
Charmed life?
George Washington was never wounded in battle.
Ever?
Nope.
I don't like those kinds of people. I wouldn't want to be around that guy because here's the deal. He's not taking a bullet, but others are. Okay? Like that one guy that goes out, he's the only guy who comes back from the battalion. Like, I'm not going out with that guy again. He's got a horseshoe up his ass, but everyone else doesn't. It's like, I don't.
It says on May 23rd, 1777, anyway, Richard, or Dick, Calloway, and John Todd left Boonesborough to represent the county of Kentucky in the Virginia legislature. With even fewer men at his disposal, Boone divided his force into two parties. While one worked the fields, plowing and planting crops, the other stood on guard, rifles loaded and primed, scanning the forest for movement. So they're still trying to plant crops and grow stuff and all of that. Boone often warned his men not to try to spot an Indian in the brush. He told them to look instead for the artificial straightness of a rifle barrel lying across a log or poking out of a cover. So look for the rifle, not for the Indian. That's creepy. Sure enough, as the men were busy in the cornfields, a guard at the fort saw the glint of the sun on a rifle and then spotted a force of about 200 Indians approaching. He gave the alarm, and the workers ran for the fort as the Indians began shooting. 2 men were wounded, but they made it back into the stockade. The large body of Indians kept up a fire against the fort for the rest of the day and into the night, and they continued the attack the next day also and tried to set fire to the palisades.
Dang, those guys got some ammo.
So, we're kind of deep into this now, this whole Boonesborough, the battles at the fort. This gets nuts. You know, it kind of gets crazy. Like you're thinking this is like a movie. They should make a movie out of this whole thing.
I believe that it's not. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of Boone knockoffs from back in the day, little black and white shows and stuff. But anyway, so that's it for today. We're going to get into the next episode. It just gets better. Hope you're enjoying the show. And if you are, give us a like on our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Share it with a friend or give us a review on the podcast. We appreciate all that. It helps us continue to grow and make this show a thing long term. So thank you. We'll see you on the next one. Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying our new Dueling Pistols podcast. Remember, it's only here temporarily on the Gritty channel.
Short time.
If you want to subscribe to the main show, head on over to our YouTube channel, Dueling Pistols, and subscribe over there. And anywhere that you get your podcast, you can subscribe there. Thanks for supporting us.
We're on all platforms.
Yeah, we're out there. Find it over there. And tell a friend.
Yeah.
Tell a friend about our new show.
Tell all your friends.
Help us grow it bigger.
We're just going to turn this to an ASMR.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next episode.